and we are talking about types of network devices. We talked about the importance of the switch, the function of the switch, the router, and the firewall in the access point. Let's look at these devices as they're represented in the diagram here. These are the devices, all of the devices that we have in the Magna Cyber network, where you're going to learn hands-on. Look at the branch office where I am now. There is a firewall, there is a switch, there is an access point, and I'm recording on this laptop right here. There are other devices that are connected here as well. Now, what I want you to realize is that some devices can have more than one function. You see over here, you have a switch, you have a router, and you have a firewall. But over here, you see no router. You might wonder, well, are all of these devices on the same network, or is this network not able to communicate with another network? Yes, it can. That is because it still has a router even if you don't see the router. The router lives inside of the firewall. In fact, this switch that I introduced to you earlier is a firewall. It is a FortiGate firewall made by Fortinet. Now this switch, this firewall, functions as a switch. It can switch frames between devices that are on the same network. It functions as a router. It can switch packets, it can route packets between devices that are on different networks. And it functions as a firewall, which is really what it's meant to be, in that it inspects data and allows or denies. Well, this is a firewall, and it has all three functions of the three major types of network devices. Some firewalls even have an access point built into them. Think about your home network, right? You don't have a lot of devices. You may have just one device that your internet service provider provided to you. Then that device will be a combination of a router, a firewall, a switch, and an access point so that you can have the Wi-Fi, the firewall function, the routing function, and the switching function all in one device. In enterprises, typically there are separate devices in most cases, but in plenty of cases, there are devices that perform 2 or 3 functions. The firewall will always perform at least 3 functions: switching, routing, and firewalling. The routers will perform the routing function, and sometimes you can add a little bit more functionality to make it pretend to be almost a firewall. But the switches, they can perform 2 functions plenty of the times. And one function is the function of the switch, which is to switch frames between devices that are on the same network. The other is the function of the router, which is to route packets between devices that are on separate networks. When that happens, you can call this switch a layer 3 switch, when it functions both as a switch and as a router. That is because there is something called the OSI model. We will dive into that in granular details very soon. But for now, suffices it to say that the OSI model positions the switches at a layer that is called layer 2, in the routers at a layer that is called layer 3. And when the switch performs as a router as well, it is called the layer 3 switch, to say that it has the function of the router that it can perform. When the switch functions only as a switch, we call it a layer 2 switch. Look at these types of switches, to these types of devices that we have in these types of segments or blocks that we have on this network. We have the service provider edge. This is where we exit to go to the internet. We pay a service provider to give us that service. This is the edge of our network, where we secure everything that's entering or exiting the network. You as a student, you sit down here at home and you remote into this network here. So we control very heavily what you can do on this network and how you can enter this network. Not everyone will be able to come into this network. You are allowed to because you are a student, but everybody else will try to enter and they won't be able to do that. That's the job of the firewall. Now, beyond the edge of the network, we have the core. The core can be built with routers or with switches. And most of the times there would be layer 3 switches. There can also be layer 2 switches at the core. But you have the distribution switch here, which is a switch that performs layer 2 and layer 3. It is connected to the router. You have the access switch, which is a switch that allows endpoints. An endpoint can be a server, a router, a printer, a laptop, a server, any device that a human can interact with. That's an endpoint. The access switch allows these devices to connect to the network. Or in the case of the branch office where we need wireless access, we add an access point to the switch to expand the switch beyond being a device that needs a cable to connect to it, to a device that now can allow you to connect to it wirelessly. So access switch and wireless access point, they perform both the same function. And here, our access switch, we call it layer 2 because it only performs as a switch. All right, I think that's a good overview of the multifunction devices, as well as how you can modulate the network or create modules for your network to make it easier for you to understand what device lives at what area of the network.